Good evening, everyone, and thank you for logging into our webinar today. My name is Kamal, and I'm joined by
Anil.
And hopefully, next half an hour, we can debate on what we promised with you about how to make work from home work for all of us.
Hi, guys. Thank you for joining us on this conversation. Kamal, first of all, let's have disclaimers. Have you ever worked from home?
I have, Anil, maybe about 8-10 days in my life so far. That would be it. And in that 8-10 days, honestly, I can think of days when I had to work from home because I had to prepare for some, conference. So I was giving talks. So I was working with myself. So those days it was very productive. And when I was working from home because I had a jet lag and I couldn't go to office in time. And those are days I felt I couldn't do anything because by then I was already in a leadership role, and I felt in leadership roles, there is very little you do, sitting at home, so I felt those days were not so productive. That's my personal experience of working from home.
Okay.
How about you, Anil?
Well, I barely worked for a month, Kamal, and that was a situation where I was setting up my previous company, and I was the first hire. I should say I didn't enjoy it working from home. I wanted to quickly get to a workplace, so I decided after a month I should be working out of a co-working space. But that 1 month, of course, I didn't feel much productive, and I was concerned, if I'm really, doing justice. And even family members would think that, I have free time, and they would ask me to walk my dog or attend to some people, who are at the door. So I felt that, I quickly should get into an office environment, and I chose to work from a, co-working space.
Okay. Now, I think if we get to what we wanted to discuss today, by the way, one thing I wanted to highlight is, guys, we got questions. Freelancing isn't work from home. I want to put that away because we are discussing today only about people who are full-time employed with organizations and still, wanting to or have an option to work from home. So we are trying to discover, the whys and whos and when, and hopefully, the how of, working from home.
Right. So this is a bit of a challenge, for companies. What are the concerns and challenges if you examine, Kamal? You would come across points like, companies that are trying to build a strong culture, they would find it difficult if a lot of their employees are working from home. And companies that need really extensive collaboration across, group working together, across divisions working together, extending this benefit would be a big challenge for those companies. And of course, for companies who are really trying to push innovation and creativity, you want people all hands at the workplace. So it would be a big challenge for those companies as well. And also difficult to promote personal development when you have a lot of people who are outside office, while you have the senior folks and resources at a certain place. How that should be affecting people working from home, how those benefits would reach people from home. I would consider these as challenges for employers.
And I clearly possibly say hear you saying rather that, at least in the Xpheno context, from a culture building point of view,
right?
If our employees are logged in listening to this, that they can't expect to have work from home.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think I also want to reflect a little on the employee expectations. I think when organizations offer work from home, it's sort of for them, if I were them, it sort of denotes trust, that you're trusting me. It in a way also engages me, because you're trusting and putting me to in a certain way that I want to operate with you.
Right.
And I can't, emphasize less on the independence, the space that it actually provides, because, you allowed me to work from home. And clearly there should be tools, we can't be left alone without having to have a necessary access to the organization. I think from an employee expectation point of view, these are things that I see are very, very crucial. And if I had to dwell a little on why opt for work from home from an employee's aspect, Anil, though it is given, but there are things which are hidden under the word of flexibility. What would you call as flexibility?
Well, I'm staying very far away. We all live in Bangalore, which is very crowded and very congested city. So if I'm staying away and I need to travel, say 2.5, 3 hours to workplace, I would want that benefit of working from home. Or for in instances where I'm supporting a family member, I'm giving care, ailing a person, elderly at my home, I would certainly, appreciate if my, company allows me to work from home. And if I'm dealing with some personal challenges, which once I overcome them, I can get back to work. For that temporary period, if my company extends, that would be great.
Let me stop you there, Anil. What would you think organizations would do if there are people who are, let's say, not performing in the organization context or the manager's opinion,
right,
and has a personal health problem? Do you think the organizations would extend a work from home for a person like that?
Well, it would be a little challenging because, Kamal, those are the very folks who need, a lot of direction. They need, supervision. They need direction. They need mentoring. They need coaching. When all of those inputs are required, allowing the person work from home would be a big challenge. I think really one needs to weigh in the pros and cons of that particular case. But generally speaking, I think companies would find it very difficult, to support people who are struggling on the work front and let them work from home.
That sounds a little discriminatory to me because you're not providing to somebody who has a personal need. So that's my opinion on that. But
right,
from an organization point of view, I could also see that that many organizations use work from home almost like employer value proposition context. They want to attract talent. They say, oh, we have work from home. When they want to engage and retain talent, they say, look, we have work from home and they really flash it across. And of course, today's world, real estate is getting expensive in the big cities.
Right.
So cost is an issue. So goes without saying that organizations also consider that, especially large organizations who continuously grow in big cities and where their talent is possibly available only in big cities. I think cost is a definite consideration. In fact, productivity, I think organizations think that, what you said, Anil, in the world of commute getting very, very longer, when people had to spend 3 to 5 hours to traveling, and we've heard such stories, especially in all the 3 big cities of India, Mumbai, NCR, and Bangalore. I think people get more productive when they're actually not traveling and spending that time actually get their work done.
Right. So as far as productivity goes, Kamal, let's at the end of the conversation see if there are some research papers available.
Sure, we do that. Anil, one aspect of who needs work from home is hotly debated,
right,
honestly.
Right.
There are organizations, can we say that, who say it can be for all? It almost like entitlement. I remember once asking a bunch of my colleagues as to what should we do on work from home. They said it should be like a leave.
Right.
Like I have 7 days CL, 7 days sick leave, and about a 7 days privileged leave. Give me also 7 days work from home, so I'll take it when I want.
Right. So in a way, it's being a policy, extended to everybody, like a leave.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we were saying. Or some of them are saying, should it come with restrictions like benefits? We know that different managerial levels have different benefits. Some people have, certain kind of leaves, or some people have car, things like that. So some people felt, can we actually layer it than having it on a common basis?
Sure.
And also, on a case-to-case basis, like you mentioned, somebody had a personal challenge, they have to take care of somebody. Do we provide to that, or to provide to only top performers?
Right.
At least I know, in one of my employment tenures, we had this thing that, for about 4 days in a week, people need to come to office who are top performers. That means people who are above their targets, and 1 day they could work from home.
Right.
And I felt it was discriminatory in a way, but it really worked well because those guys actually did well, and none of them actually went below their targets at all. In fact, more people wanted to get to that group,
right.
And I saw that number swelling quarter to quarter, So
you must run it as an experiment?
I ran it as an experiment, but unfortunately, in a company which was global in nature, somebody found out.
So your HQ came hard on you?
Yeah, almost. So the HQ said, this is enough, we don't do it elsewhere, so stop it. So we stopped that.
Right.
And also, Anil, in terms of role specific, we all know that customer-facing roles are difficult for you to, work remotely, especially, the high-touch customers.
Right.
And somewhere this is a hotly debated one, in a way of non-managerial roles. Typically, individual contribution roles are better to work remotely or from home.
Right.
Because managers need to be, on a high-touch mode.
Correct.
So this is how I think, one could look at who needs work from home.
Right.
The when part is contextual.
Correct. So companies that are in a stable phase, Kamal, would not mind implementing this.
But is there anything called as a stable phase at all, Anil? I don't know. Every organization, is in a growth mode.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. But then, companies overcome their initial challenges of, survival. I think they would tend to, probably offer this as a benefit. And companies are obviously, doing well and their growth is sustained. Those companies would tend to offer this. And there are a lot of companies also vying for, great places to work tag. That's the branding that they want. So obviously they would look at this as one of the components of them, achieving this.
Okay.
So I think these are the sorts of companies that would offer.
And also some of them do it purely because their competitors are also doing, so
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's just to be in contention.
Yeah. And Kamal, what sort of employee shouldn't opt for this?
Definitely, I think if it's your first job, you don't even know what the job is like, right?
Yeah.
So if you're out of college and this is your job, it's not a time for you, and I don't think anybody will give you also. And also, even if you are a senior, professional and you join a new organization, it's not the right time because you don't know the organization. I guess this is obvious,
right?
But I think the third point is very important. When you have a strained relationship, I hope people are aware that when there is a strained relationship with a supervisor, that's not the time to actually sit at home and sulk and brood or whatever. Right. That's the time you actually be there in front of your supervisor and actually make things happen. The last is a difficult one because all of us think we are performing one way or the other, but I hope everybody sees a mirror at home and that in the organization context you're not performing. That is definitely not the time you want to work from home, even if that's an option available to you.
Right.
I think it's also important to summarize, where work from home does not work,
Yeah. So early stage companies, Kamal, startups, which are trying to still establish, trying to create their company culture, or companies going through M&A scenarios, obviously, those are not the sort of companies, or even turnaround, Yahoo story is very well documented and spoken about 2013 when they had the new CEO come in. So she wanted a break from the earlier, sort of rhythm of the company. And, she had a blanket, ban on work from home. So you can see these are the sorts of companies that would not extend work from home. And industries.
Industries, I think very clearly some of the industries like education, healthcare, which are high touch in nature, manufacturing, which requires, again, a high level of precision and supervision, banking because of regulation, banking and insurance primarily because of regulation, are the places where you won't find, work from home on a regular basis. Though some of the roles in those industries can be actually, sort of done remotely.
Right.
And we discussed this, Anil, in terms of roles, customer facing, leadership and entry level are not the place where work from home just doesn't work.
Right. So we also touched upon this, that companies that are in stable phase, growth phase, or who are trying to, enhance their employer branding through many of these, great places to work sort of title or position that they're trying to get, or industry recognition they're trying to get. So obviously these are the sorts of companies that would totally make it work. And industries.
Industries very clearly, I think IT has taken a leadership because also I think there's some amount of influence from the overseas countries that many MNCs came from. That they've experimented it there and it has worked for them, so it was easier for them to sort of implement it in India. And also we had a lot of professionals from US migrating to India, which also I think had a huge influence in terms of IT industry sort of embracing it first. Creative, primarily because this is a work which can be done from anywhere. When we say services, and we mean consulting kind of industries where there's a huge component of individual contribution. And which is what goes into the role as well, highly skilled individual contributors, especially roles where there is a definite measurable output, is where I think working from home really works.
So in terms of making it work for employers, what they need to enable, obviously they need to provide tools for output measurement. Also, they need to make sure that the role is defined and the KPIs are well laid out, so that over a period of time they can really measure the productivity of their their employee. And of course, they need to provide a a fair approach to work from home. They need to have this uniformly across their employees, and also they have to take care of the growth and development needs of people. I had an instance where there's in known circle a lady friend of mine. She did work from home for about 7 years, and I saw that as a trade-off. Though she got the convenience of work from home, she in effect had to compromise on a growth and career progression because she wasn't attending work. She wasn't visible to their to her peers, to many of her supervisors. So I felt that this sort of is a trade-off. You want this benefit, but then what are you willing to give? Let go. So I felt that if the person had not continued this extent of work from home, really the person would have been at least a couple of notches higher in terms of career.
In fact, on the contrary, Anil, in fact, I promoted somebody to a role of a director when she was actually working from home for 4 months.
Okay, how did that go?
Of course, from a reaction point of view, nobody liked it. Everybody thought I was favoring somebody,
Yeah.
But honestly, you can't promote somebody who's reporting to you unless, your supervisors also have authorized it, as it works in large companies. So it was quite visible. The work which was done from home, I think, did catch people's attention. So in a way, we had all the reasons to promote the person.
Sure.
But of course, there'll always be naysayers for everything. So I think what happened to me was completely opposite. I thought I should share that.
Sure.
And going from an employee perspective, Anil, to make it work, people need to be really disciplined and they have to focus on output. Many a times people think working from home is like, answering calls and, responding to emails. That's what they think. Right. But people have to think that, they're, output based. The very reason they're working from home because somebody's trusting you that you'll produce something.
Makes sense, yeah.
And also to make it work, employees need to look at a hybrid approach. I know this is little contrary to what we are saying, that you're working remotely. At the same time, we're expecting people to come possibly infrequently to work.
Sure.
So it allows you to sort of show up, collaborate with your employees, or let's say with your peers, or with your boss. Discussing a whole lot of things, what you talked about, the development piece.
Sure.
And the visibility part. I think, let's face it, politically or even otherwise, out of mind, out of sight is a very clear thing. You had to be in front of people who are your stakeholders.
Sure.
The last, important thing is going beyond, Anil. I think when an organization gives you a space to actually work from home, the best way to make it work is what extra can you do?
Right.
Because you have taken the flexibility from an organization, because many of us have sort of taken it for granted today that, work from home is like, it's like you are giving as an organization because you need it more than I need it.
Right.
In that, I have not seen employees going beyond and making something which is discretionary, which makes people say, wow, this thing works. My employees go beyond and do work. I think that's the most critical part I see missing when it doesn't work.
Right. But don't you think that discipline and, structured working is really critical for somebody? Do you know anybody, who really created an office kind of an environment at their workplace? Or, do you know any of such?
I heard so. One of my bosses in US, he showed me actually when I was doing a video call with him once that his one room in his house was like, it was almost like an office.
Right.
Everything laid out. There isn't, anything else but just work related stuff.
Right.
I thought that was, and I've seen recently in one of my neighbors' house also, where I think one room is like an office space. So sometimes it's about recreating.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works because I have not experienced it personally, but I think some of them tend to recreate the work atmosphere. So it allows them to, think as though they are in office and work. Not everybody could afford to do that, but I guess recreating that could help is what I'm observing,
Right. And maybe logging in the right time every day, taking your breaks at the, prescribed time. I think those kind of structures, I think, would tend to work. Of course, if you're in an office, you will be, out on a coffee or at a water cooler, and there may be some distractions of those kinds.
I call it entertainment. You get motivated when you go to water cooler,
right.
What others are wearing,
right.
What is the latest gossip, there's so many things in the water cooler which I guess you have missed out of late.
No, I mean, for the ones working at home, those distractions aren't there. So I'm sure they're able to spend more time on productive stuff.
But I think it's an individual trait, and how
Right.
disciplined you can be in office, you can do it at home also. I think it cannot be just the environment; it is you also, is what I think, to make it work. I think it's time to take the questions. Thank you all of you. We had over 50 questions before we even started this, so we've sort of put it into three buckets of, let's say, personal efficiency and productivity, where you guys have asked about whether the productivity goes up or down, the personal efficiency increases or decreases in terms of output. Anything, Anil, on this front?
Yeah, I mean, I was just nothing in the Indian context, Kamal. Just that internationally, of course, in the US, Harvard Business had done put out a report where there was a call center that had given this option. They let half their employees work from home and half the employees work, at office. And they found that the people who work from home, their productivity was about 13 to 15% higher. But surprisingly, when after this experiment, they asked the work from home employees if they continue to want to work from home. About 2/3 of them actually reverted to coming back to work.
Mm-hmm.
So they said that we would like the office setting.
No, I heard that one of the people that I was interviewing said that, look,
Yeah,
I don't want to work from home because I want to dress up and come to work every day. That was the reason. But there are different motivators for different people.
absolutely. Yeah. So whether it affects personal efficiency or not, we sort of touched upon it. Will it?
What about postponement on it?
Well, this can happen even when you're in office. So again, it's a personal trait. It's nothing which is universal. So if you are the kind of person who tends to postpone things, then obviously it doesn't matter where you're working.
Yeah, but also I think this productivity, Anil, is more a perception thing. The way I look at it, because it manifests in different ways. In the Indian context, I have seen that people tend to opt for work from home on Mondays and Fridays, almost like an extended weekend,
right?
Which increases a lot of skepticism that this has become more a personal convenience than efficiency and a productivity-driven tool,
right? So people are having extended weekends.
Yeah, it's almost like that, because always work from home is opted on a Monday and a Friday,
right?
So
I'm sure companies have some ways of sort of curbing this.
No, I know of a large automobile company which says that you cannot take an off on a Monday, and rather, I won't say off. You can't opt for work from home on a Monday and a Friday. And if there are holidays in between, let's say Thursday is an off, or let's say Tuesday is off, you can't work from home on a Monday or a Friday,
right?
Because they believe that employers beat it. But I also think it beats the spirit of trust of employment in a way, if employers tend to do that, because hardly in every rule that you have in a company, there are about 10% of people who always are likely to violators, you can call them that.
Yeah.
And let's say we've seen this all the time. There is an integrity violation by one employee. The remaining 99 of them will get a long memo saying how the rules have changed, how we all have to, almost like just because one person violated, or let's say disappeared from, let's say after resigning or something like that, then the entire rules changes to how you can resign, how I will change the notice period to 3 months, because only small percentage of people tend to do that.
Yeah.
And that again, I think works against work from home as a policy as well, because there will always be inefficiency in some of them opting for it, but possibly the good guys pay the price for it because they're always a 10% violators.
So some of the questions were revolving around, why companies, I mean, what kind of challenges do companies face in implementing work from home? This is also something which we have, spoken about in our earlier, part of the conversation. And whether managers need to be upskilled is the question. So upskill is the right word?
I wouldn't use upskill or retrain. I would say orientation is right, but then getting beyond semantics, I would say that overall, I think we're still yet to come to terms with work from home. I think we stand on podiums and talk about flexibility and the advantages of it. But the conversations I hear inherently is people are still suspecting whether it can lead to better results because of what we said earlier. Right. There are always violators. There are always people who do not produce, which happens even if they're in office. We know that any good company has 30 to 40% people who are above the target at any given time. So it is clearly nothing to do with skilling the managers. It's about orienting them that it could happen even if people work in office one. The problems facing organizations, Anil, in implementing is about it's the fairness.
Right.
Companies always feel that when they actually give it to one, how does the other feel? How does the other fare? Because not everybody can be given work from home, right? So typically the questions about fairness comes into play. Many organizations do not have tools to measure productivity.
Right.
And that is another challenge companies have because the outputs and KPIs are not well defined. So that's a typical, you can also call it a managerial problem, not an organization problem, but it is a problem faced by the organization, whether structurally they're aligned to actually manage work from home.
Actually, for managers, Kamal, it can be pretty challenging if they have teams scattered and people working from home. They have to plan their meeting schedules in advance. They have to, many of their internal meetings they have to organize, client interactions they have to organize. So I can understand that managers are, people who look at this with a lot of skepticism. But it requires a certain kind of a manager to be able to organize and engage with their team, to make this successful. Actually,
but it actually beats me. And if you look at a global manager today,
right,
or let's say people who are managing workforce from across the country.
Right.
Let's say I'm in Bangalore and I'm having people who are working from a Delhi or a Bombay kind of a situation. This means that that in a way people are not sitting in front of you;
Sure.
they are sitting elsewhere.
Sure.
If you have that orientation that people are sitting in my office elsewhere in a Bombay or a Delhi or a New York, because of which, they are really working hard and they're efficient.
Sure.
I think the same thing applies. They're not in front of you, but they're remotely working from home.
Yeah.
How the hell does it matter?
True.
So I think there is a bit of orientation there, and I think tools are important to track the productivity.
Yeah.
And frequent communication measurements as it happens. Most of the good organizations have tools to actually and dashboards to look at the work. The employee engagement part is tricky because the entire idea of working remotely is that you are wanting the employee to work remotely, but at the same time making employees part of the organization is very important for them to actually be motivated and have an affinity to the organization. The many questions, Anil, revolved around
industries. Yeah, what kind of industries can offer this and what not? So we listed a few where there's a greater propensity of work from home, and obviously the services industry, IT, BPO, advertising and media, and any general services company, I think they wouldn't have much challenges. But then the traditional company industries, education, consumer, pharma, banking, insurance, it's not so commonly seen.
That's right. And Anil, the way organizations today are, sort of stepping up their infrastructure, where lavish offices are being built,
True.
Where you can find everything that you require. Obviously, in the past, cafeteria was a luxury. Then came the crushers. Then came the gyms. Now I believe there are pet shelters. Yeah. So offices almost becoming like a luxurious home.
Yeah.
So do you think the work from home context will change the way organizations are building their infrastructure?
No, I think it would tend to coexist, Kamal. Surely this benefit is something that companies want to offer, but at the same time, they want to make it attractive for for employees to come in, and they want to pamper them. They want to provide gourmet meals. They actually want them to stay on for a very long time, and many of their personal needs also being taken care in the office setting. So companies are really spending big money on building huge campuses. So if you see many of the tech giants, they've done so. So I think they will tend to coexist.
Okay, I guess that's where the world is going. But I definitely don't want to be on a flight where the pilot is working from home.
Right.
Thank you all for logging in. Are there any new questions beyond it? No, thank you. I think we had 50 questions which we had grouped into 3 slots. And if there's anything new, please write to us. You know where to write. And thank you again for logging in.
Thank you so much, guys. Till next time. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.